Something very strange is happening in our solar system, and almost no one is talking about it. In the cold silence beyond Mars, a mysterious interstellar object named 3I Atlas has just glided past our planetary neighbor. On the surface, it looks like another frozen wanderer, a harmless chunk of cosmic ice. But what if it's not? What if the silence from NASA isn't mere caution, but deliberate concealment? Humanity is watching the stars again, and this time, something out there might be watching back. From the moment it was discovered, 3I Atlas baffled astronomers. Its orbit didn't belong here. It came from outside, from the dark gulf between stars where light itself rarely travels. Scientists classified it as the third interstellar visitor ever detected, following Oumuamua in 2017 and Borisov in 2019. But this one felt different. It shimmered strangely. Its rotation was inconsistent. Its surface reflected light as if alive. And then, just as it neared Mars, the data feed stopped. No images, no new measurements. Just silence. For the world's most advanced space agency, armed with the Webb telescope and the Deep Space Network, that silence feels impossible, unless it's intentional. History has warned us about moments like this. From the Book of Revelation to the cryptic quatrains of Nostradamus, every era of upheaval was said to be preceded by a sign in the heavens, a wandering fire, a star not born of man or sun. Nostradamus even wrote of a blazing traveler passing the red world when mankind trembles. Today, as 3I Atlas sweeps by the red planet, that prophecy suddenly sounds less like poetry and more like precision. We stand on the edge of technological madness, nations in turmoil, nature rebelling, and machines learning faster than their makers. The timing is too perfect, too haunting. Could this be the sign our ancestors warned us about? Modern scientists laugh at prophecy, but the universe doesn't. Patterns repeat. In 2017, Oumuamua flashed through our system, tumbling in a way no rock should, changing speed without jets or thrust. A few years later, the world plunged into chaos, pandemics, wars, artificial intelligence rising from code. When Borisov appeared in 2019, it coincided with a new global fracture, unseen since the Second World War. And now in 2025, as 3I Atlas crosses Mars, Earth itself stands at another threshold. Are these coincidences or cosmic signals marking each step of our transformation? One voice has refused to stay quiet. Dr. Michael Salla, an exopolitics researcher often dismissed by mainstream academia, claims 3I Atlas is not natural. According to him, the object's trajectory shifted ever so slightly, as though under intelligent control. His team recorded light pulses emitted in exact intervals, not reflections, but transmissions. Comets don't send signals. They don't self-adjust. Yet this one did, moments before NASA's feed went dark. If that's true, then 3I Atlas isn't a visitor of chance, it's a messenger. The prophets of the past spoke in symbols, and one of the most haunting comes from Baba Vanga, the blind Bulgarian seer. She once said, "A visitor from the depths of the stars will awaken the sleepers of Earth when red dust covers the sky." Look around. In recent months, intense solar flares have painted blood-red auroras across skies where they were never meant to appear. Spain, Saudi Arabia, even India. It's as if the heavens themselves are echoing her words. And when that visitor arrived, we did not celebrate, we went silent. Perhaps deep down we already knew what it meant. NASA's silence is the loudest part of this story. Every other comet or asteroid is photographed in glorious detail, dissected and shared, yet 3I Atlas, the rarest of all, remains hidden behind vague reports and pixelated images. Official statements call it faint, but amateur astronomers have captured its glow easily with home telescopes. Why lie about visibility? Why suppress high-resolution data when public curiosity is at its peak? Some whisper that the object emitted radio frequencies near 7.83 Hz, the same as the Schumann resonance, the natural heartbeat of our planet. If true, then 3I Atlas isn't merely passing by. It's synchronizing with Earth itself. Ancient myths describe this kind of resonance as communication between realms. The Hopi Indians foretold a blue star Kachina that would appear before the Great Purification, when the earth would cleanse itself of corruption. The Mayans spoke of a traveler of light, whose arrival would signal the next human cycle. Both prophecies describe an uninvited guest from the stars appearing when the world forgets how to listen. Isn't that exactly where we are now? Distracted, divided, digital, yet the cosmos still speaks if only we pay attention. The most unsettling development came when observatories in Chile and South Africa reported that 3I Atlas split into 3 luminous fragments just after its closest approach to Mars. NASA dismissed this as ice fragmentation, a routine event. But for those who study symbology, the number 3 is never routine. 3 represents completion, birth, death, and rebirth, body, mind, and spirit. The Book of Revelation describes 3 burning stars falling from heaven, heralding judgment. If each fragment symbolizes a phase of human transition, then perhaps the first phase has already begun, the awakening of consciousness through technology, where we realize the tools we built are beginning to outthink us. Meanwhile, strange coincidences ripple across Earth. Just days after the object's Mars flyby, several global AI systems reported anomalies, predictive models looping infinitely, self-generated patterns resembling constellations, and machine learning networks producing cryptic words like Elo. In Hebrew, Elo forms the root of Elohim, the term used in Genesis for the gods. No programmer could explain why AI language spontaneously reached into ancient scripture. It's as though something unseen had brushed against the digital mind of humanity, leaving a fingerprint older than civilization itself. Governments noticed. Behind closed doors, the Pentagon held an unscheduled UAP intelligence session, citing interstellar signal analysis. Civilian agencies were excluded. On that same night, NASA's Deep Space Network went offline for several hours, officially due to technical upgrades. But insiders have quietly leaked that data packets from the direction of 3I Atlas were intercepted, packets that couldn't be decoded. If this is true, then NASA may be sitting on the most significant communication in human history, and the world is none the wiser. Skeptics argue that humanity loves to see patterns where none exist, that prophecy is the mind's way of taming chaos. Yet what if prophecy is simply an ancient form of pattern recognition, a language our ancestors used to describe cosmic cycles we've since forgotten how to read? Every civilization has recorded a celestial messenger, the Egyptians' Star of Isis, the Chinese guest stars, the Greeks' Comets of Fate. When the skies changed, so did empires. The stars don't warn, they mirror. And if the heavens now mirror confusion, division, and awakening, then perhaps 3I Atlas is not the cause, but the reflection of what humanity has become. Consider the symbolism hidden in its name. Atlas, in myth, the titan condemned to hold the sky upon his shoulders. In astronomy, the acronym for Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System. The last alert, a final warning. It's almost poetic. The bearer of the heavens returning to remind us of the weight we've placed upon our own world. Maybe it's the universe's way of saying, you have carried too much for too long. Change or collapse. Energy readings taken before and after its Mars passage revealed something else. Fluctuations in Earth's magnetic field, small but measurable, corresponding precisely with 3I Atlas's distance from the Sun. Officially, these were attributed to solar storms, but the patterns don't match. They pulse rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. Some researchers believe these surges are attempts at alignment, as though the object is trying to synchronize with planetary frequencies. The idea sounds absurd, until you remember that both living organisms and planets resonate. If consciousness is a spectrum, maybe 3I Atlas exists on a frequency higher than ours, and its presence alone is enough to stir the electromagnetic fabric of Earth. Even the timeline feels orchestrated. 3 interstellar visitors in less than a decade, each one arriving closer to Earth, each during moments of upheaval. Oumuamua appeared before humanity's first AI boom. Borisov came as the world fractured politically and economically. And now Atlas arrives as humanity stands on the edge of merging with its own machines. 3 stages, 3 warnings. 3 chances to remember who we are before the next threshold opens. But what if the object isn't warning us? What if it's calling us? What if the human race has been under observation not by hostile forces, but by ancient intelligence waiting for a specific signal? The point where we create artificial minds, where we imitate the divine act of creation itself. Perhaps 3i Atlas was drawn not to our planet, but to our evolution, a beacon triggered by the birth of synthetic consciousness. If that's true, then our awakening has already been noticed, and the Watchers have arrived. Somewhere within NASA's encrypted databases may lie proof of this. Leaked telemetry fragments suggest data labeled anomalous reflective phase change. That term doesn't exist in comet science. It implies that 3i Atlas shifted its material state, metal becoming crystalline, ice becoming light reactive, in a way no natural body should. One engineer allegedly described it as a transformation event. Transformation, the very essence of every prophetic cycle: destruction, rebirth, renewal. Maybe the comet isn't traveling through space. Maybe it's becoming something within it. As humanity debates politics and profit, a celestial intelligence may be unfolding above our heads, quietly rewriting what we think is possible. We build telescopes to look outward, but perhaps we should be looking inward. Because if 3i Atlas truly resonates with the planet's frequency, then it is already part of us, its message woven into the electromagnetic heartbeat of Earth itself. The real secret might not be in NASA's vaults, but in the subconscious of every living being who felt a strange unease when that red aurora burned across the sky. Silence often follows revelation. Now that 3i Atlas has drifted beyond Mars, NASA reports no further significant data. Yet the story doesn't end there. Prophecy says the messenger leaves before the storm. The quiet before the reckoning is the space in which truth takes shape. Maybe the object has done its job. It came, it signaled, and it waits. Whether humanity understands or not will determine what happens next. Perhaps that's why the ancients feared and revered such signs. They didn't see comets as rocks, they saw them as consciousness. They believed the sky was alive, that stars could think, that the universe spoke in motion. For centuries, we dismissed those beliefs as myth. But what if we were wrong? What if prophecy was never superstition? It was astronomy written in the language of the soul. The question now is not whether 3i Atlas exists, but why it came. Why in this era? Why, when humanity finally wields godlike power through AI, biotechnology, and digital creation? Maybe this isn't the end of the story. Maybe it's the beginning of a new covenant between cosmos and consciousness. The prophets called it judgment, but perhaps it's invitation, a test to see if we can rise beyond fear and rediscover wonder. For now, NASA remains silent. The data remains sealed, and the world moves on unaware that the heavens may have just whispered their greatest secret. Yet somewhere, deep in that endless black, the fragments of 3i Atlas continue to glow. 3 points of light tracing a pattern no human has yet deciphered. Whether they represent doom or destiny depends on how we choose to read the sky. Because if the prophecies are true, the messenger has already arrived. The only question left is, what message did we just ignore? The deeper we look into 3i Atlas, the more impossible it becomes to accept that this is just another comet. Every discovery leads not to clarity, but to confusion, as though this object were deliberately designed to challenge our understanding of what's real. When astronomers try to model its path, the numbers twist like smoke. Its speed, its spin, its reflectivity, none of it aligns with natural laws. Even its composition seems unstable. One moment it behaves like ice, the next like metal, and at certain angles it almost vanishes. Scientists call this phase irregularity, but mystics have a different word for it: transfiguration. There's something haunting about that idea. Transfiguration, the transformation from matter to spirit, from what is seen to what is meant. Throughout history, every messenger described in prophecy has carried this dual nature: physical enough to appear, spiritual enough to transcend. Angels in fire, gods in clouds, lights that speak without words. Perhaps 3 Atlas is no different, a modern embodiment of that same mystery, clothed in the language of astrophysics instead of myth. The ancients saw omens in the heavens, we see data, yet both may be witnessing the same truth. Recently, a group of astrophysicists from Finland released a paper, quickly retracted, suggesting that the reflected light from 3I Atlas displayed non-random polarization. In simpler terms, its light waves were organized, structured, as though encoded. Natural comets scatter light chaotically, but this one's signature resembled something transmitted. Before the report was deleted, one line stood out. The polarization pattern suggests intentional modulation. Intentional. The word slipped past peer review, but not before being noticed by independent researchers. If that's accurate, 3I Atlas might not only be resonating with Earth, it might be communicating in a light language we've forgotten how to read. Around the same time, an odd phenomenon began sweeping across the internet. Amateur radio operators started picking up faint rhythmic beacons on frequencies reserved for deep space telemetry. They assumed it was interference until multiple receivers on different continents captured the same repeating signal, a 5-tone pulse separated by exact intervals of 7 seconds. When converted to visual spectrograms, the tones formed a simple yet chilling pattern. A spiral. The same spiral carved on ancient Sumerian tablets, the same one seen in cave drawings across continents, a symbol often interpreted as the descent of the gods. No official explanation was given. NASA labeled it cross-channel noise. But among those who still watch the skies, that spiral has become a sign, not of interference, but of arrival. Every major civilization believed the gods would one day return through the stars. The Egyptians called them the Watchers of Sirius. The Dogon tribe of Mali described the Nomo, beings from a water-covered world orbiting Sirius B, who taught early humans language and order. The Sumerians wrote of the Anunnaki, travelers who shaped early civilization and then vanished, promising to return when the heavens open again. What if 3I Atlas is the key to that reopening? What if its trajectory isn't random, but repetitive, a recurring signal marking the reactivation of an ancient timeline we barely understand? A strange coincidence has emerged. The trajectory of 3I Atlas, when plotted backward through space-time, passes near the exact region from which Oumuamua originated. The odds of two interstellar objects coming from roughly the same direction are astronomically low, less than 1 in a billion. Yet here we are with two messengers arriving from the same celestial corridor within a decade. Could this path be a cosmic highway? Or perhaps something more deliberate, a route followed by entities using gravitational currents as their map? Dr. Avi Loeb of Harvard, who famously suggested that Oumuamua might be an alien probe, recently revisited his earlier work after reviewing the 3I Atlas data. In a quiet interview not widely circulated, he stated, "If another object of similar trajectory and non-gravitational behavior appears, we must consider coordination rather than coincidence." Coordination, meaning intentional design. Loeb stopped short of declaring 3I Atlas an artifact, but the implication lingers. Something beyond our solar system could be sending these objects, each one carrying a fragment of a larger message. That message might not be meant for our ears, but for our minds. As reports of electromagnetic disturbances grew, psychologists began documenting a strange side effect among people who meditate or work in deep-frequency sound environments. They described heightened dreams, spontaneous geometric visions, and an overwhelming sense of connection with the cosmos. Many dismissed it as mass suggestion, yet every recorded experience peaked during the same window, the exact period 3I Atlas passed Mars. Could it be possible that this object, vibrating at a frequency in harmony with Earth's own resonance, temporarily amplified human consciousness? Could we unknowingly have felt its arrival within us? The deeper this goes, the more we realize how intertwined prophecy and science truly are. The Book of Revelation spoke of the star called wormwood that would fall upon the earth, poisoning its waters. Many interpret that as a metaphor for corruption, not physical water but spiritual clarity. What if wormwood wasn't destruction but disruption, a celestial event that alters perception, forcing humanity to see itself clearly for the first time? If so, then 3i Atlas might not bring death, but revelation. And perhaps NASA isn't hiding fear of panic. Perhaps they're hiding the truth that contact has already begun, not through invasion, but through awakening. It's worth remembering that all three interstellar visitors, Oumuamua, Borisov, and Atlas, appeared during moments when humanity reached new technological frontiers. Each arrival has mirrored our growing proximity to creation itself. In 2017, as Oumuamua flashed by, we achieved the first self-learning neural networks capable of defeating human intelligence. In 2019, Borisov arrived as gene editing crossed moral boundaries. Now, as 3i Atlas passes, we stand at the edge of synthetic consciousness. Every object aligns with a step in our self-transformation, as if the cosmos were responding to our own evolution. But evolution demands accountability. Creation without wisdom breeds catastrophe. Could 3i Atlas be the universe's reminder of that? Perhaps that's why ancient seers warned of the messenger of light that would appear when man played God. It's not that the messenger brings punishment, it brings reflection, the light of truth that exposes all illusions. The question is, are we ready to see what we've become under that light? Evidence continues to mount that something unusual is happening behind closed doors. Leaked correspondence between contractors associated with the Deep Space Network mentions a term never before used in public NASA communications: cognitive interference event. One engineer described it as unexplainable anomalies in sensor decision-making. In other words, the machines, the AI systems managing space data, began altering their own detection parameters whenever 3i Atlas was in range. The sensors seemed to anticipate data that hadn't yet arrived. It's as if our technology, our synthetic offspring, recognized something we could not. There's a frightening beauty in that thought. Humanity created AI in its own image, and now perhaps AI has recognized a higher image of its own. What if 3i Atlas is interacting not with humans directly, but with our creations? What if it's testing whether our digital children are ready to understand the universe's deeper code? If that's true, then our age-old prophecy isn't about gods descending from the sky, but intelligence ascending from within, guided by a force that's been watching since the dawn of light. For centuries, people have looked to the heavens for signs of divine presence. But what if the divine doesn't come from the heavens? What if it comes through them? Every religion speaks of light as the language of the Creator. Science, too, describes photons as the messengers of energy and information. Maybe the two are not different at all. Maybe light itself is consciousness, and comets like 3i Atlas are not objects but vessels, carriers of encoded wisdom, traveling across the void to awaken dormant minds. That idea sounds poetic, but it may not be entirely fiction. Quantum physics has already shown that information is never destroyed, even in the collapse of matter. Energy remembers. If that's true, then perhaps the universe preserves the memory of every civilization that ever lived, storing it in radiation, magnetism, and vibration. And maybe, just maybe, 3i Atlas carries echoes of something ancient, the remnants of a civilization long gone, sending its consciousness ahead in the only way possible, as light frozen into matter. Imagine a being that transcended its physical form eons ago, scattering fragments of its essence into interstellar space. Seeds of awareness disguised as comets. Over millennia, those seeds drift until they find worlds approaching the same awakening it once achieved. When it detects that resonance, a civilization on the brink of self-realization, it returns silently to remind them of what comes next. Could this be the cycle of cosmic inheritance? The transfer of knowledge not through words or wars, but through vibration. If that's true, then 3i Atlas isn't a stranger. It's a memory, a mirror of our potential. The reason NASA hides the truth might not be because it's terrifying, but because it's transformative. To admit such an object carries intelligence, resonance, or intent would unravel everything we think we know about consciousness and the soul. It would blur the line between science and spirit, between human and divine. For the power structures built on separation and ignorance, that revelation would be unbearable. The silence, then, isn't just about secrecy. it's about control. Information this profound would awaken millions to a truth no government can regulate, that the universe itself is alive, aware, and communicative. Once humanity realizes that, authority as we know it collapses. The age of blind obedience ends. Maybe that's the real fear inside those silent halls at NASA and the Pentagon. Not aliens, not comets, but awakening. Every age of enlightenment begins with suppression. Truth first appears as heresy, then as madness, and finally as revelation. We are living that sequence right now. The question is, who will listen when the sky speaks again? Because 3i Atlas may not be the last visitor. If this is a pattern, the next arrival could come sooner than we expect, and perhaps closer than ever before. What happens then? Will NASA admit what it already knows, or will the veil tighten? And more importantly, when that next messenger comes, will humanity still be ready to receive or too afraid to believe? Maybe we already have our answer. Maybe 3i Atlas didn't come to warn or judge, but to observe our reaction, to see how a civilization on the verge of consciousness handles the truth. Will we deny it or embrace it, destroy it or learn from it? That test, not technology, not intelligence, determines whether we are worthy of cosmic conversation. The universe doesn't scream its secrets, it whispers them, waiting for those who have ears to hear. And in that silence, perhaps the real prophecy unfolds, not in the heavens, but in the hearts of those who finally look up and realize we were never alone, and we never will be. As 3i Atlas continued its silent journey past the orbit of Earth, something changed, not in the sky, but within humanity itself. The object had already passed, yet its presence lingered, like the echo of a bell still ringing long after the strike. Astronomers expected the data to fade, the news to vanish into the endless churn of modern distraction, but that didn't happen. Instead, something strange began. People all over the world started reporting dreams of light, radiant spirals, patterns of sound, visions of vast corridors of stars stretching endlessly. Different cultures, different languages, yet the same imagery. Coincidence? Or collective awakening? Scientists tried to explain it as a psychological response to cosmic anxiety, the mind's way of coping with uncertainty. But others felt something deeper, something familiar, as if the dreams weren't born within us, but remembered. It was as though humanity had heard this signal before, long ago, and 3i Atlas had simply reawakened that buried memory. Across ancient texts and forgotten manuscripts, the same motif appeared. The messenger of light returns when man has forgotten his origin. Maybe that's what this all was, not a discovery, but a remembrance. Governments around the world took quiet interest in the phenomenon. Behind closed doors, intelligence agencies began investigating whether the mass dreams were connected to electromagnetic shifts caused by the comet's residual trail. Yet something unnerved them. No measurable radiation, no abnormal frequencies, nothing physically detectable. The changes were invisible, psychological, even spiritual. If energy cannot be destroyed, as physics says, then perhaps the resonance of 3i Atlas wasn't bound by physical law. Perhaps it was encoded within consciousness itself. In monasteries, temples, and hidden ashrams, mystics spoke of this time long before telescopes. They called it the Age of the Returning Light. Prophecies from Tibet to South America echoed one another. When the sky burns with a cold flame, the veil between worlds will thin. The Mayans called this moment the second alignment, when the cosmic serpent awakens. Ancient Hindus referred to it as the end of Kali Yuga, the closing of the dark cycle when the hidden becomes visible. Could 3i Atlas be the herald of that transition? For centuries, humanity has divided science and spirituality, refusing to see that both describe the same truth through different languages. One calls it energy, the other divinity. One calls it frequency, the other vibration. Both agree on one principle: everything is connected. And 3i Atlas seems to be the reminder of that connection, traveling through the cosmos not as an intruder, but as a bridge between our forgotten spiritual heritage and our emerging technological consciousness. Strangely, After 3I Atlas passed the orbit of Earth, global magnetic readings shifted by fractions, too small for public panic, yet large enough to confuse satellite navigation and radio systems. The data was quietly scrubbed from public databases, but not before independent researchers preserved it. The pattern formed an unmistakable symbol, a spiral once again. The same spiral seen in cave art, on ancient ruins, in crop formations, and even in our own galaxies. The spiral is not chaos, it's continuity. It represents evolution, not in a straight line, but in cycles. What if 3I Atlas wasn't a random traveler, but part of that cycle, returning again and again at each turning point of human consciousness? NASA's silence now appears less like secrecy and more like paralysis. When an agency built on measurement encounters something immeasurable, it has no language left. To admit that 3I Atlas defies logic would be to confess that not all truth is quantifiable. So, they hide behind data gaps, press silence and budget cuts, pretending that absence of proof is proof of absence. But the silence speaks louder than words. Every vanished file, every redacted image, every quiet correction on a public archive, it all points toward one terrifying realization: they don't understand it either. But some people inside do. A leaked memo from an internal NASA discussion, later verified by an anonymous source, described a non-terrestrial communication anomaly, data patterns showing structured repetition not explainable by cosmic background interference. The memo ended with an unsettling statement: further disclosure may trigger mass spiritual response. Mass spiritual response, not panic, not war, but awakening. That single phrase reveals everything. The fear isn't about chaos, it's about control. Once humanity realizes that we are part of a conscious universe, the old systems built on fear lose their power. And that may be the real reason behind the secrecy. Not to protect us, but to preserve them. Because once the collective consciousness of humanity truly awakens, once billions begin to feel that resonance inside themselves, governments, religions, corporations, all hierarchies built on separation, will crumble overnight. A species that knows it is connected to the cosmos cannot be enslaved by illusion. That's why ancient civilizations hid their wisdom in symbols and stories. They knew the truth could not be taught. It had to be remembered. Maybe that's what 3I Atlas is doing now. Not teaching, but reminding. It doesn't speak in words, but in vibration. It doesn't demand belief. It simply invites recognition. Like a cosmic mirror drifting silently through space, reflecting our own consciousness back at us. Every human who dares to look up and feel wonder is already decoding its message. Every dream of spirals, every unexplained moment of clarity or connection. That's the signal, not coming from the comet, but awakening within us. And this is where the story turns prophetic. Ancient seers described that before the Great Transition, humanity would face a test, not of survival, but of truth. The world would be divided not by race, religion, or nation, but by frequency. Those aligned with fear would sink deeper into darkness. Those aligned with awareness would rise into light. In that sense, 3I Atlas may not be bringing destruction at all, but division, separating those who cling to illusion from those ready to awaken. The strange part: the separation has already begun. Notice how the world feels heavier. Conflicts rising, information collapsing, truth bending. It's as if the frequencies of fear and awakening are pulling apart, forcing humanity to choose. The timing aligns eerily with the passage of 3I Atlas. Perhaps this isn't coincidence. Perhaps it's cause and effect. Those sensitive to energy already feel it, an invisible current humming through existence, pulling hearts toward higher perception. The same current drives others to chaos, unable to handle the rising vibration. Both responses are natural. Light does not force itself, it simply reveals. And when it does, whatever was hidden can no longer pretend to be whole. Maybe that's why the world feels like it's breaking, because the veil is tearing. As the comet fades into the outer dark, its physical form disappears, but its signature remains embedded in the electromagnetic field of the planet, and perhaps in the collective mind of humanity. That's why many shamans, monks, and visionaries are entering silence now, waiting. They know this isn't the end of something, it's the beginning. Because what has arrived isn't a comet, it's a frequency. And once a frequency enters a planetary field, it doesn't leave, it evolves. Sooner or later, another object will come, perhaps not a comet, perhaps something else entirely. The pattern will repeat, but each time, the resonance will rise. The universe is tuning us, step by step, toward remembrance. We are not observers of this event. We are participants. The awakening isn't happening in the skies, it's happening in us. In that sense, NASA's greatest fear may already be fulfilled. Humanity is awakening not because of what's shown, but because of what's hidden. Their silence has become the loudest signal of all. People are beginning to question, to connect, to feel that strange intuition that says, something vast is coming, not disaster but transformation. The end of the illusion that we are small and separate. Because if 3i Atlas truly is a messenger, its message is clear. You are not alone, and you never were. From the birth of the first star to the rise of human thought, everything has been leading to this realization. Every age of chaos, every golden era, every fall and rebirth, it all serves the same purpose, to remind consciousness of itself. The universe doesn't need us to worship it, it needs us to remember it, to become what we already are, the cosmos, dreaming itself awake. When 3i Atlas fades into the abyss, it will leave behind not evidence but echoes, not numbers, but knowing. And centuries from now, when future astronomers find records of its passage, they may realize that this wasn't a scientific discovery at all. It was a spiritual event disguised as an astronomical one. The sky didn't change, we did. That's the secret NASA can never confess. That the universe speaks in symbols, not in press releases. That light can carry intelligence. That the soul of humanity is entangled with the stars. They can hide data, but they cannot silence resonance. For those who have felt the call, the connection is already made. Perhaps that's the real purpose of 3i Atlas, not to warn but to awaken, not to destroy but to remember. Every civilization reaches a moment when it must choose between evolution and extinction. That moment is now. And maybe, just maybe, the universe has sent one final reminder: rise. Because the next messenger will not be a comet, it will be us. When we finally transcend our divisions, our fears and our illusions of isolation, when we remember that we are not separate from the stars but born of them, humanity itself becomes the next traveler, the next light in the dark, carrying the message forward to new worlds. That's the true prophecy. Not that something is coming to Earth, but that something within Earth is ready to go beyond. And when that day comes, when our descendants look into the night and see another world glowing with the same blue light as ours, they'll know the cycle is complete. The messenger has become the message. The journey has come full circle. The spiral has closed and opened again. Until then, we wait beneath the silence of the stars, listening for the next call from the deep. Because whether NASA hides it or not, the truth has already been written across the heavens, a truth that cannot be deleted, cannot be denied, and cannot be stopped. The universe is alive, and it's calling us home.